Senator Gianaris, thanks so much for being here.
It's great to be with you, Dan.
So Democrats will keep the majority in the state Senate going into next year. When you first won the majority in 2018, you really hit the ground running when you came into office in 2019, passing some really controversial bills like the Child Victims Act and the RHA. When you're going into next year having that majority again, do you have any top priorities that you're looking at? What's on your list?
Well, first of all, we're really proud of the work we did over our first term in office. It was historic. It was the most productive session that New York has ever seen. We're really proud of our efforts and what we did. Now, what does that mean going forward? So much is colored now by the pandemic and coronavirus and our response to it. So I do expect that 2021 will be largely consumed by budget questions. How do we fill the large budget gap that we have? Where do we find revenues to fill that hole? And how do we avoid deep cuts that will impact people's lives and do much more damage to the state than is already being done? So I do expect a large part of the conversation to be around those issues. That's not to say we don't have other things of great import to do. We're going to continue to focus on standing up for working people, leveling the playing field. And some of these things are all interrelated. The budget decisions we make have an impact on people's lives and have an impact on income inequality and wealth inequality in our state. So it's going to be a very busy year without a doubt, and we have our work cut out for us.
You know, when you're talking about the deficit, how do you think the state should close the deficit? We obviously have a lot of different ideas, like the governor's waiting for the federal government to come up with the money and send it to New York. Others want higher taxes on the ultra rich. Others want things like the stock transfer tax. A lot of different ideas. Where do you land on that?
Well, look, no one answer is going to solve all the problems because the budget problems are so vast due to the economic shutdowns we've experienced. Yes, it would be great if the federal government comes through, and there's a much greater likelihood of that now that Joe Biden's going to be our president. Of course, the Republican Senate in Washington is unlikely to be helpful. So we'll see where that comes down, but we have to be prepared to move forward. It's my opinion that we at all, under any circumstances, need to avoid deep cuts to important services. Doing that causes much more damage than raising revenue from those who can afford it. Every major economic study has shown that. And so I fall on the side of let's make sure that the wealthy, who have, by the way, done very, very well during the pandemic while others are suffering, let's ask them to chip in even more than they already do to get us through this difficult time. You're seeing the wealthiest among us increase their wealth exponentially just over the last 6 to 9 months during the awful time that we've had, while other people are out of work, can't pay their rent, don't have jobs. And so it seems to me a very clear-cut question is let's ask those who have to give. They should be expected to do more because they have more.
Is there any worry in that idea of a veto from the governor? I know that he has been against higher taxes on the ultra wealthy. He's come around a little bit in recent months, but is there any worry of Democrats in the Assembly and Senate coming together on that idea and then having it get pitched to the ditch, I guess, by the governor?
Well, depending on how these absentee counts come out, will affect everyone's bargaining power over that question and others. The Assembly already has a supermajority. It's been secured. The Senate, we are still fighting to get it. As you pointed out, the governor's already softened. I do not think it's acceptable for either house in the legislature to look at deep school aid cuts, deep health care cuts, things that really dictate whether people are going to choose to live in New York or not. We hear a lot about this fiction that if we raise taxes too much on the wealthy, they might flee. Well, I can promise you, if we cut to the bone to the point where our schools are not as good as they can be, or our hospitals are not as good as they can be, then people will really, and it won't just be a couple of billionaires, there will be people by the thousands. So let's make sure we get this right, maintain the services people expect us to provide. And the best way to do that is to ask those who have to give.
You know, another revenue raiser that people are talking about for next year is possibly legalizing marijuana finally. We've been talking about it for the last several years. It seemed to gain some momentum since the Democrats took the majority in the Senate. Do you think this deficit is the final impetus to get across the finish line, especially after New Jersey voters voted to legalize it down there in November?
You know, I think it's something we should have already gotten done, and it seems that there's general agreement that we want to get it done. I think the stumbling block has been where does the revenue generated go in terms of is it just dumped into the general fund for the governor to do with as he pleases as part of the budget process, or do we dedicate it to certain communities that have suffered unduly due to the criminalization of marijuana all these years? That's what we have to figure out. I think we need to figure it out. I will just give a word of caution to everyone saying that because we need the revenue from legalization won't be realized right away. You have to set up a whole industry and a whole regulatory structure. So I don't know that it'll help us in the next several months get through the immediate budget gap, but certainly revenue going forward will continue to be necessary.
So the economic impact of the coronavirus obviously extends beyond the state government. It extends down to renters and tenants, which are having a really hard time right now during the pandemic. And the moratorium on evictions at the federal and state level both expire at the start of next year. I know that you've been a proponent of the cancel rent movement, which would allow rent payments to be waived for certain low-income tenants, but that idea doesn't seem to have much favorability from the governor, I guess. So if not canceling rent, how do you think the state could be helping these tenants at this really tough time?
Well, look, here's the problem. There is a massive amount of rent that is due, and someone's got to pay for it one way or the other. Ideally, the federal government would show up and write everyone a check and pay their rent for them, and that would make everybody whole, and small homeowners wouldn't suffer either, and life would go on. I don't know the likelihood of that. Again, we have a little bit more hope because of the new president coming in, but I don't know how much resistance the U.S. Senate Republicans are going to provide for that. My view was, let's start at the bottom of the economic ladder and say those who are most in need, let's help them first. Let's say if you owe rent, we've denied you your job essentially by order of the government by shutting down the economy, then we should also nullify your biggest financial obligations in the short term. Now, I understand that has an impact for small landowners, small homeowners, and that's why I also think that we should have mortgage forgiveness and some support so that they don't suffer either. But what we do know is those higher up the economic ladder, whether it's the banks providing the mortgages or the very big real estate holding companies that can absorb these costs, have the ability to pay. It's really just another way of having the conversation we just had. Those that are doing well should be asked to do more, rather than creating an eviction crisis or a homelessness crisis that would follow that. There's already some suffering going on, and if even the inadequate moratorium expires without a solution, it's going to be a crisis.
Before I let you go, I just want to unpack the election results really quickly with you. State Democratic Chair Jay Jacobs had said in a recent interview that phrases like defund the police may have hurt Democrats at the poll this year. Obviously, you're not losing certain seats in the legislature right now. I'm wondering how you respond to that. Do you think the police reforms and the defund the police movement hurt Democrats at the poll? And what does that mean for the party in New York going forward?
Look, people are very quick to make judgments on partial results to further their ideological goals. What we shouldn't do as Democrats is draw a conclusion that the attacks the Republicans are hitting us with are the cause of everything that's wrong, therefore let's not advance our agenda. We need to come together as a conference. We have a diverse conference with a lot of different views. It's going to get more diverse as we win more seats upstate in this cycle, and we come to consensus and we move forward. But I certainly am not one to allow Republicans to dictate our direction. That's part of the problem I believe the Democratic Party has had. We're way too reactive to the criticisms of those who oppose us. We should figure out what we think is the best way forward as in our own house, and then move that way. But to say that because we were attacked by something, and then to unfairly say we lost because of it, even when we won, just seems backwards to me.
All right, Senate Deputy Majority Leader Mike Gianaris, thanks so much.
Thank you, Dan.